Thank you for joining us, and today we are looking at the credentials for credible leadership. We're in that time again when we are looking for national leaders, and as you know that in this country we have made mistakes in the past, and the big question is, who are these leaders that we must seek to find so that they can represent us? And to answer this question, we have with us Mr. C.K. Wambugu. Mr. Wambugu is a chairman of JPRC, that is Justice, Peace and Constitution Committee at the PCA Roresho Parish. He has been chair and member of Presbyterian JPRC, and actually the first secretary of the national JPRC at the PCA Church. He has a wealth of experience from his work, especially when he worked for Fungamano, where he's currently serving as the secretary of Fungamano Joint Forum for Religious Organizations, and also an active member of the civil society. We have known you, Bwana Wambugu, from the 4 Cs, and also in the clamor for the constitutional review. And I know that you're going to share a bit of that experience with us today. So welcome, and kindly you can just introduce yourself and say a word of hello.
Thank you. Hello, viewers. Yes, we are sitting here this morning as a church to talk about leadership and the state of the nation, because we are at a critical time when we should be thinking very seriously about what type of leaders we require in this country to take us to the next level of development and service.
Thank you so much, Bwana Wambugu. Maybe to start us off, you can tell us who is a leader and what is leadership?
A leader is that person who leads an organization towards desired goals, or a political leader who leads a nation also towards desired goals by the citizens in order to take them to a place better than where they may be. And if you recall the leadership that Moses had, his duty was to lead the children of Israel from Egypt to a better place, which is commonly known as Canaan. Although he never got there, because he handed over somewhere along the way to Joshua, he led the children of God all the way and did not fail anywhere except when he disobeyed God and was asked to repent, but the punishment was that he would never see Canaan, the desired destination.
Yes.
And similarly, the leadership in a country such as Kenya, if you have a leader, you would expect that leader to take you from the level of, say, poverty, the level of desperation, the level of oppression, where people are oppressed, just like Moses led the children of Israel from oppression and slavery to a place that is better and where they can enjoy as children of God.
Yeah, thank you so much. A lot of insights there, that leadership is a process of moving people from one point to a desired end.
Yes.
And in this case, you're talking about moving people from their problems, from poverty to a place where they can cater for their needs. And I think that is quite an insight for us as we talk about leadership.
Precisely.
Yes. According to research, leaders who are ethical, efficient, progressive, enthusiastic are mostly admired. But we found that in this country, over and over again, we keep on choosing leaders who are unethical, corrupt, and those that are not progressive. I don't know where we go wrong, but I want to maybe describe the state of the nation currently, and maybe suggest why do we fall for that kind of a thing.
First of all, it is important to understand that the leaders that we elect do not seem to be committed to serving the citizens of this country. Rather, they go to parliament or to the county assemblies, previously known as county assemblies, and not for service, but rather for salaries and allowances that they get from the taxpayer to enrich themselves. Because time and time again, we have seen the members of parliament and the MCAs getting into their places of work after elections, and the first agenda has always, without exception, been to increase their salaries and allowances.
Yeah.
And this is one thing that we in Fungamano have always been very much against. We have spoken very loudly about it, and we have said it is not good for a servant of the people to consider his benefits as the first thing that he should do before even offering any service.
To the people. And so you were talking about our leaders being self-seeking and being greedy. But my big question is, what's the problem? Is it, the analogy of the monkey and the forest? Who is the problem? Is it the monkey or the forest?
Well, that's an interesting conversation. I think it is the monkey. The forest doesn't change, but the monkeys change. Every time we elect leaders, after 5 years, we expect them to be better than the others.
Yeah.
But the practice has been that every lot that comes in behaves exactly like the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the problem is the leadership.
The problem is the leadership, and we too have to blame because we are the ones who elect this leadership, and we do not take time to examine the individuals we take to parliament or to county assemblies.
And how can we help this situation because it seems there's a problem in Kenya?
It's a national problem which should be tackled by both the churches,
Yes.
the civil society, and even by the government itself to educate the citizens of this country that we should elect people with qualifications for leadership, not just because somebody has amassed wealth from whatever source, which he uses to sometimes bribe people, even to the extent of giving the electorate handouts in order for him to be elected to parliament. And these handouts are usually very, very, very meager. And there is no reason why Kenyans should be bought to elect leaders. We should elect leaders who are credible, and we know that we can easily assess the caliber and the history of the people we elect because they have been raised up amongst us.
Yeah.
We know them. And where we may not know them very well, we can always do some research to find out whether they are people who would care for in serving the country,
yeah.
or in serving or people who have amassed wealth just for themselves.
Yeah, and that's why you talk about credibility, and we know that credibility is the bedrock for leadership. How do you define a credible leader, and what are the traits of credible leadership?
A credible leader would be, first of all, a servant leader, rather than a servant boss relationship leader. So the first qualification to look at is whether the person you are electing has a history of service to the people.
Yeah.
And whether whatever wealth he may have acquired over time, if he is wealthy, has been acquired properly. And obviously, here we are talking about integrity.
Yep.
A leader without integrity, a leader without morals, and again, there I'm talking about morality being a key factor in electing somebody to lead you. Because if you elect somebody who has no credibility, who has no integrity, and somebody who has no morals, that person will not do what the citizens want, because he will go into those leadership positions to amass wealth for himself and relatives and friends, and he will, to some extent, be robbing you, taxpayer, because you will not get the kind of service and development that you expect from that kind of a leader. And another thing is that we, the electorate, should be very careful in the promises that the politicians are making whenever they are campaigning. The promises like, I'll bring you a road here, I'll bring you a hospital here, I'll bring you a school here. Promises that are actually not possible for that particular leader to accomplish, because these are developments that are supposed to be done by the government itself. Because the government provides services such as medical services, the government provides roads, and many other things that
so it's not a favor.
Provides.
It's not a favor to...
So, and it is not a favor for a politician to tell you that he'll bring you this or the other in the area he represents.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. And I think morality, you talked about being ethical, you talked about track record. I think these are some of the things that Kenyans must be looking out to.
Precisely.
As we look for the next kind of leadership. One of the interesting things about our leaders is that they don't admit mistakes. And you know that one of the key features of credibility is authenticity. Being real, being able and ready to accept mistakes and take responsibility and do the amendments. What can you say about our leadership? Because sometimes we find leaders who cannot admit mistakes, they cannot take responsibility over their actions. And this has actually left us wondering whether our leaders are really authentic or not.
That's a very good conversation. And I wish that we had leaders who have conscience to do what is right for the people, and leaders who will take responsibility, because a leader who does not take responsibility is not worth being a leader.
Yeah.
In management, we say that if you are in a leadership position or in a managerial position, you must take accountability. The buck stops at you. Even if your juniors misbehave or steal, and you are in the leadership, the buck stops at you. And this is why it is very disappointing to those of us who understand management to see leaders being mentioned in certain corrupt practices within their area of operation. May they be leading ministries or departments in the government, and they do not resign.
That's a foreign
Some
one
of them
in this
have
country.
even gone to the extent of saying that they would rather die rather than resign.
Yes.
And this is a very worrying situation where leaders do not take accountability. Right from the top
Yeah.
to the
So you say it's a matter of conscience.
executive level in government.
Yeah.
People do not seem to have conscience.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I think you talked about the conscience, and conscience is very important. And I think we can look up for leadership that is able to admit mistakes and take responsibility, and also make amendments for their mistakes. Now, I know we are now in that time when we are looking for leaders. The campaign drums have started beating, and we are actually going into the thick of things. What would you advise Kenyans to look out for? What are these qualities we should look out for in terms of leadership?
Before we even talk about the qualities, it is important for us to address one very painful experience that we citizens are seeing. And this is where the campaigns for political positions, especially at the top, have begun long before the legal pronouncement for the campaigns. Because according to the Constitution, there is always a time from when campaigns for political positions should begin. And what we are seeing at the moment are campaigns that are premature, that are drawing crowds and crowds of people together, even at a time of COVID, which is rampant. This is why it's being called a pandemic. And nobody seems to care. And nobody seems to stop those campaigns. As if we are a country without laws. And that's a very, very worrying situation. And I think it is important for the government to put its foot down and say the campaigns have not been declared, positions to be campaigned for have not been declared,
Not vacant.
and therefore, no campaigns should be going on, whether on the roadside, or whether in the churches, or wherever. The campaigns have not been declared.
But do we
And it
ever
is
come out
illegal.
of the
It
campaign
is
mode? Because,
illegal
like,
for
I
the
know-
government to just watch Kenyans being exposed to those dangers.
But Kenya has never been away from, after elections, we go back to campaigns.
That is the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, and I wonder how whether we work, because immediately we elect new leaders, the campaign for the next election starts.
Begin.
Yeah,
And that's the unfortunate thing about Kenya.
yeah,
These things don't happen in many other places. They don't happen. But in Kenya, the campaigns begin for the next elections soon after one election.
yeah.
But we have laws that determine and govern the process of electing new leaders.
And so the time has not yet come.
And there are
for-
timelines.
Yes.
There are timelines that are actually constitutional and provided for in law.
So I think
But
the
nobody
government
seems
should
to
listen
follow
that.
those timelines.
Yes,
And the government itself, right from the top, is just watching when people are breaking the law.
yeah. I think that is very clear. This campaign is not yet. Let's wait for the proper time to start the campaigning.
Yes,
So
and,
let me take you
at
back
the
to the question about the qualities of leaders. Who should we look out for?
The quality of a leader that is credible would be that person, as we said earlier, who walks with his people to
Yeah.
a destination that God has desired for them.
Yeah.
And I go back to Moses again. And I also remember the words of Isaiah 58, where leaders, whether in the church or in the government or even in civil society, are supposed to take people as the center of their work. Focus on the people of God.
People-centered leadership.
People-centered leadership.
Yes.
That's very critical,
Yes.
especially in this country at this time.
Yeah.
And if you look at the words of Isaiah 58, God is telling the prophet to tell people that you may pray day and night, you know, you may fast and do other things in seeking God's face, but God will not hear you until such time when you realize that God is interested in that poor person, in that oppressed person, in that person who walks naked, in that person who cannot meet his or her basic needs for the day. And that is the role for all of us, including those that lead in the church.
Yeah.
That you must be people-centered in your leadership.
So people-centered, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now, I know you've been here for quite some time in terms of civil society, clamor for change in the country, and you've witnessed different leaderships like Jomo Kenyatta, President Moi Kibaki, and where we are. How can you compare like leadership across board? Do you have any progress as a country in terms of democratic space? And is there any growth? Are we somewhere?
Yes, we are somewhere.
Yeah.
We have come a long way because there are times when the citizens could not speak against the malpractices of the government and the leaders that they had elected. And those malpractices were plenty and enormous to the extent that people felt like they had no leaders, and yet they could not speak because you had what we called authoritarian leadership. And it was like a one-man show who would say, this is what we do, this is where we go, and we all follow like sheep.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't, then you'd be clobbered. But now, with the new constitution, and this is why we are fighting for a new constitution, we are able to speak because we have some measure of democracy.
Yeah.
And what we need to do now is to entrench democracy within the Kenyan society.
Yeah.
Because again, as I said earlier, we have laws and constitutional provisions which govern certain ways of behavior by the politicians, but they are not being observed. And this is why there is still a little bit of oppression and disappointment that we see by the fact that our leaders are acting with a lot of impunity as if there were no laws in this country. And yet we have a constitution that is considered the most progressive constitution in the world, which would enable this country to rise up from the ashes of poverty and everything else that we are not happy about, to very high levels of development.
Yeah.
But that will not happen until we have leaders who care, until we have leaders who do not steal, until we have leaders who do not give Kenyans an opportunity to bring food to the table every day they wake up. Because where you have no opportunity to bring food to the table because the food has become so expensive, because fuel has become so expensive, the inputs have become so expensive for food, for growing food. Obviously, the government cannot explain why this is happening and claim that it is managing the affairs of the nation properly.
Okay. So that's right. I think we have grown. And now finally, because we're in a church setup and JPRC works in the church, I don't know whether you can maybe tell us whether the church has a role in politics and what is the role of the church in fostering credible leadership.
The church has a big role in so doing. And as I said earlier, the church and the government and the civil society must complement each other in ensuring that the citizens of this country rise up from the ashes of poverty up to a level where everybody can feel that they can afford their daily needs.
Yeah.
And the church needs to tell the governors of this nation where they are going wrong without fear or favor. And in fact, this is what we have been doing at Ufungamano.
Yes.
That's why we exist in Ufungamano, because we are like a checkpoint where we have been telling the government what is happening here or there is not right. Yes, you may be doing good things for the nation, but things like bloating the government with the people that are friends of the leaders,
The cronies.
creating positions even to put in your friends are wrong. Because when you create positions in government and the government becomes too costly because it is too large, and again, this is outside the constitution.
Yeah.
Obviously, you are denying the citizens that very needy service in the village,
Yeah.
like medical facilities, like good schools, like staffing schools with good teachers. You're denying the citizens all those basic services just because you want to remain at the top. And when you get those people at the top, they are earning so much money that you cannot even imagine how the taxpayer is able to survive. Because all the taxes you are paying go to pay the people at the top. Because these people are the ones who earn the biggest salaries, the biggest allowances, they are driving the biggest cars. They are roving around the country using taxpayers' resources. And therefore, you cannot provide the basics to the people. And that is, to us, very irresponsible leadership.
So the church needs to call out for
the church needs to actually tame these leaders whenever they do those kind of things. And you can do so by preaching against the behavior of the politicians and the kind of leaders that we have, and saying, yes, you are coming in the gap, coming in the gap. You are playing your role that God has assigned to you.
Yeah.
And like Prophet Isaiah, we referred to earlier, you have to tell the government and the other leaders that they are committing a crime, they are sinning even.
Have the church lived up to this role? Because I know
so
there are those days of your contemporaries.
Yes,
like,
unfortunately, currently, you have church leaders who are following the campaign trails of these politicians.
Yeah.
When you look at the delegates that Deputy President is hosting in his residence. Who do you see?
Bishops.
You see top citizens collected from the villages and the counties and whatever, and then you also have bishops.
But they are going to pray for the
sitting
for the leader.
I don't think they go there to pray. And if they were to pray for these people, it should not be in the open. They should come in rallies. They should come, or delegations. They should come to the church
and be prayed for.
To be prayed for. When you look at the rallies that even the former prime minister is addressing on the road, or hosting in his whatever, you see church leaders, in fact, fully dressed in robes.
Are they not citizens? Are they not supposed to participate in
you see,
the politics of this country?
Church leaders can participate in the politics of the country only by voting for the candidate of their choice. The church leaders, in my view, and I think it is the view even of Gamano, is to act as mediators. And therefore you cannot take positions in the campaigns of these aspiring politicians. Because when you go with with a delegation to the deputy president place, or to the former prime minister's place, what are you telling us? What are you showing us?
You're trying to direct you to the right leadership.
So the church should be neutral.
Yes.
But you must be able to tell our leaders where they are going wrong. But you cannot do so if you are already deciding with one and leaving the other.
So the church must maintain its prophetic voice.
You have to
be the custodian of morality.
Correct.
The conscience of the nation.
Correct. Yeah.
And be able to call out bad leadership.
Correct.
And put people to back to the straight and narrow.
Correct. Yeah. So you are mediators. The churches, can only mediate. And the unfortunate thing is that the state of the nation at the moment looks like we are divided right down the middle. We have those followers of the deputy president. The campaigns seem to have already begun, and those who are now following the president's side with the former prime minister. And these are very dangerous trends, because we are being driven to a place where even after the elections have been held, you will still have a heavily divided country. I think at this moment, the church has the biggest role to play to try and mediate and bring sanity and peace in the country before we get to the hottest place next year.
Wow, thank you very much. I like your Volvo, and I've never seen you driving the old machine, and I think you're so passionate about it. Yes. Is it a car you bought the other day, or do you have a history to it?
No, I have a history to it. And this car has been running from 1979 up to today.
1979.
1979. You can calculate the number of years it has been running, and I like keeping that kind of legacy because of a car that I bought when I was a very young man through a loan of my employer.
Yeah.
And it's still going strong.
Yeah, it's a beautiful car. It's a beautiful car. You can tell us about yourself in terms of who is Mr. Wambugu, and what legacy have you left, and how would you want to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as a family man. I have a family, of 5 children, and I have 5 grandsons and 2 sons-in-law.
Wow, beautiful family.
So it's a sizable family. Along the way, I might get others, but I thank God for that family. It's a very closely knit family, and we keep praying that we remain united.
Yeah.
As for my service to society, I would like to be remembered as a person who sacrificed for society, in the sense that I am one of the very people, if not the one that started this whole conversation and debate about a new constitution.
Yeah.
Starting from the Professionals Committee for Democratic Change. By that time I was in the profession of librarianship. And the professionals got together, and I was one of the people who agitated for that togetherness, to look at the country in relation to the governance and the constitution that was current then. And I'm looking at as far back as 1992, soon after the repeal of the
Section 2A.
Section 2A.
Yeah.
So that the battle for multipartyism, the battle for the review of the constitution, I have participated in all those.
I remember you're very active in Rev.Njeru.
I've been a reformer, and I must say I am a reformer by nature, because even if you read my books, and I have several books that I have written, including a novel, you will see that all my books do have the concern for the people and the concern for how governance should be in this country.
Yeah.
And this is why we risked even our lives during those authoritarian times in agitating for a new constitution.
Did you get into trouble with the government
And
during that time?
I was in the places where we had people like Joya and Rev.Njeru Wachira of both of the PCA.
Yes, I remember Sugar.
Where we were having civil society leaders like the former Chief Justice William Mutunga,
Yes.
the current governor of Makueni, Kivutha Kibwana,
Yes.
Kamau Kuria, a very famous lawyer in this country,
Yeah.
and some very serious clergymen who really knew what reform was all about. The late Bishop Ireri of the Anglican Church. And it's like we took over from the previous change agitators, Bishop Muge, Bishop Okulu, Bishop Gitare, and this is what has brought Kenya where it is now, enjoying the fruits of a new constitution, though the fruits are not yet plentiful as we would wish.
Not fully realized.
Yeah. But we are happy.
Yeah.
We were able to come to where we are at the moment in terms of getting the right governance instruments in this country. What we now need after getting the right governance instrument, although we still think that there are certain areas which need to be reviewed, we require now good leaders who care and who serve the people in the way our constitution requires them to be served.
Wow.
And people who are not selfish. Leaders who are not selfish.
Thank you so much for that, and we really appreciate that you contributed greatly to the to where the country is today. And I was just mentioning that I remember those days during the demonstrations. I was a young boy and I was following one of the demonstrations where I saw Dr. Njeru being beaten.
Yes.
It was a very dangerous time.
And that was the third time. The first time was when we went to Kamukunji to agitate for the new constitution, and that was in 1997, and Joya and Mushuga were leading us to Kamukunji. We walked all the way from the professional center, because that is where, again, the agitation began with the professionals. We walked all the way from professional center through the city to Kamukunji, and along the road, we had people stationed to kind of beat us up, but we continued up to Kamukunji.
Yeah.
That was the first time. The second time was when now we went to Parliament to say that before the constitution is reviewed, no budget should be read.
Yeah.
And that's where Rev.Njeru was being beaten, because
yeah.
again he was leading us.
I was in that meeting.
We were supposed to have Bishop Mwananzingi as well leading us, yes, together with Njeru. Yeah. But somehow Bishop Ndigi Mwananzingi did not appear. So Njeru took the mantle.
Yeah.
And that's where. And I was just walking beside him when he was nearly killed.
Wow. Yeah, thank you very much for finding time to share with us some insights on leadership, and especially credible leadership. And we thank God for you. You're a great man. You have played a very big role in this country to bring us to where we are today. And we pray that God will bless you and give you more years, give you energy to continue serving this nation, because you're still an elder statesman in this country. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we were privileged to have with us Mr. Charles K. Wambugu, who is chair of JPRC at PC Roresho Parish, but also a civil society leader. Over the years, he has led this country to change through many organizations. And currently, he is the secretary of Fungamano Joint Forum for Religious Organizations. And he also serves in the 4 Cs. And we thank God so much for keeping him safe and for the contribution he has given to this country and the church. May the Lord bless you. Join us again for another interview next time. God bless you and have a good night.